Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni wanji, namaste, jambo. Bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so honored and so wicked happy that you join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show, and please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Good Pods, wherever you find your podcasts. Our guest today is Michael Yam. He is here to celebrate fried rice and marinara. This episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by Hunter's Tall Tales, written by Rosalie Mass-Taylor. A million questions about Hunter's limb difference lead to tall tales, but there's one question that leaves Hunter speechless. Take a journey with Hunter as he faces his first day of school and the endless questions about his prosthetic leg. Will he give an honest answer or make up an outlandish story? A delightful and entertaining children's story about a boy with a disability that will help children understand acceptance, inclusion, and what it's like to be different. Laughter will ensue when Hunter tells his tall tales. A moment of wonder will occur when a child asks a very important question. This is a super fun book. You don't want to miss it. Hunter's Tall Tales, a fantastic addition to any family or classroom library. It's written by our friend Rosalie Mass-Taylor. We want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by the Chuckle Wobbles, delightful book by our friend Prue McDonald. Get ready to enter the wonderful and whimsical world of the funny and lovable Chuckle Wobbles from the planet Mirth, where a magical book transports them to planets whose beings have forgotten how to be happy. Their mission? To release happiness within the hearts of those who are a little sad. Join two Chuckle Wobbles, giggle and cackle, in their adventure to the sad planet of Mopus, home of the weary, dreary doldrums, where they get themselves into all sorts of trouble. Journey through the bamboozle woods to the mysterious temple, which holds many secrets, including a riddle that must be solved before happiness can be released within the hearts of the doldrums. Do the Chuckle Wobbles succeed in bringing happiness to the doldrums? Do they return home safely to Mirth? Find out this in the fantasy adventure, The Chuckle Wobbles by Prue McDonald. It is a Reading with Your Kids certified great read. Join us right now from right outside of Los Angeles. Our guest is here today to celebrate his beautiful children's picture book. It's called Fried Rice and Marinara, two of my favorite things in the world. Please welcome to the show, Michael Yam. Hey, Michael, how are you?
I'm doing great, but Jed, maybe the bigger question for you is, have you actually tried that combination before?
I am happy to say I have not.
You're not alone.
I think my dog has. So
it'll always keep you light though, make it interesting for you.
So what was the inspiration to combine these two delicacies into a children's book?
Yeah, it's a great question. This has been a real passion project for me for the last couple of years or so. And then to watch it come to life in an animated, video story, which is available on YouTube for free, and now see it come to life in an actual book has just been absolutely amazing. I never would have thought, a couple of years ago when I started this project that it would actually even get to a book format, if I'm being totally honest with you. But, I think a lot of it, Jed, has to do with access. And, over the course of the last few years or so, my cousins who are like my sisters, they have a bunch of kids between the two of them. And, the question would always arise like, hey, Mike, do you know a book like this? I'm Chinese and Italian, and my cousins who are Chinese, one of them is her husband is Jewish. And she said, look, I'm just looking for more stories for mixed race kids, for Nate and for Emma and Sophia. And she's like, I'm just struggling to find some. And in my mind, I thought, well, God, there's got to be, now there's so many different platforms. Like maybe I can try to use my background as a storyteller, which is more on the athletic side. I've been working, for NFL Network now for a couple of years and covered college football and was at ESPN for a long period of time. And I said, it's definitely a different medium, but it's something that I'm definitely interested in and love the idea of trying to create a story that had an Asian male character as a lead, which quite honestly, Jed, just doesn't exist in a large number. And it's not something that I had when I was a kid. So there was a lot of different motivations, mostly from a family perspective, but also from the idea of trying to help cultivate and plant some seeds for younger Asian children that, hey, storytelling is an actual path. It's a viable path for a career.
We talk a lot here on the podcast about the beauty of books and that they can be mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors and give kids an opportunity to see themselves positively portrayed in the pictures of books. And in addition to a male character, I'm guessing from the title that this is a character with a couple of different ethnicities going on.
Yeah, Chinese and Italian. And, the premise of the story is Mikey's about to turn 4 and, he's got his birthday party, which I think we can all remember back to our childhood and the exciting time that comes with your birthday. And his mom says, look, man, like you gotta figure out what you want to eat. Like that's a big dilemma. It's a big decision. And Mikey all of a sudden, freezes. He struggles. He's like, well, what am I supposed to do? I'm Chinese and Italian. And it's almost like this tug, this push and pull here. Like, hey, do I pick Chinese food or do I pick Italian food? And candidly, it was at times in my life, in my childhood, I almost felt like I was picking sides. I think there was a lot of positives that I was able to take away from being Chinese and Italian. And by the way, the birthday parties, my food, I always felt like was the best food because it was both Chinese and Italian food. It wasn't the fried rice and marinara. It was the mix that was on the plate. But I'm sure some of that sauce sometimes got on top of that rice, during the course of the birthday festivities. But, for me, to see this character, I wanted to basically take a common theme like a birthday party and, basically have that struggle, that back and forth. So Mikey, goes to his grandmother's and his Chinese grandmother says, well, I'm from Hong Kong. We had Chinese food. And, his Italian grandmother says, well, I'm from Italy and we had Italian food. And that's when his friend Sophia says, Mike, you're Chinese and Italian. You can do both. And at that point, he's got this idea for fried rice and marinara and he makes it and the kids show up to the party and he's concerned like, hey, this is different. This is weird. Are people, are my friends going to like it? And sure enough, it is a children's book, Jed. So it is a happy ending. And yes, the kids do love the fried rice and marinara.
Well, I mean, I'm feeling there's a lot of 4 and 5-year-olds out there who actually have had fried rice and marinara on their plates.
That's a good point.
It didn't start out that way, and I'm sure they loved it.
Yeah, no, I would hope that was the case. I do think back, it's funny, Jay, that you bring this up because, I'm 41 at this point, so I'm a little far removed from those childhood birthdays, but I still remember the emotions and the fun that I had when I was a kid. But one of the things, that's different about what you get on YouTube, like if you search fried rice and marinara, you can watch the story. If you get the actual book itself, one of the things that was really important to me was this idea of the story not ending when you finish reading that last page. So there's 2 pages at the end of the book, that allows for kids to write and draw their favorite food combinations, their funky food combinations. So, I'm hoping that there's some kids that, basically will finish the book and start thinking about their own, funky food combinations that they either have had, to your point, Jed, or want to go and try. So, to me, it was sort of that thought process that I was hoping would continue when the story was finished.
Well, I love this. My family is not Italian and Chinese. Our family is Irish and Puerto Rican. And for Thanksgiving and all the different holidays, in fact, we're planning a little cookout for tomorrow. We're recording this on July 3rd. So tomorrow for July 4th, we're going to have some Puerto Rican and Irish and American barbecue.
It's amazing.
And it is absolutely a beautiful, beautiful thing. At this point in our life, my beautiful wife and I have been married for almost as long as you've been alive. It's just it's a no-brainer, and of course you're gonna have that Irish potato salad with that arroz con gandules. And I think if one of them wasn't there, one of our guests from either side would say, "Hey, where's that? It's missing. You don't have everything here."
Yeah. No, I mean, I think to your point, I think a lot of us culturally use food as a vehicle to unite and to connect. And I think for you and your own family experiences, and certainly I think a lot of people, I hope, that message will resonate, and they have their, mixed identities or blended families that are together, and they're listening to you, Jed, talk about the food that's going to be there. They're hopefully will check out Rice and Marinara and go, oh my God, you're right. Like, this is what we do on a regular basis. And I think from a literature standpoint, I mean, you've been at it on this podcast for, 6, 7 years at this point. Over 1,000, almost 2,000, right? Almost 2,000 episodes. I think the more you talk to authors, I guarantee of like those almost 2,000 authors that you've, probably interviewed and other guests on this podcast, I think the vast majority of them, or at least a good percentage, have backgrounds that are similar to ours, right? Where I'm Chinese and Italian, and yet your wife is Puerto Rican and you're Irish. Like, I think people can connect to these types of stories. And I've always been fascinated and quite honestly shocked by the limited inventory that is available for families who have this. I've been sort of doing a lot of research over the last, few weeks and months, and it's always shocking to me about when I read some of the statistics around stories, children's stories, and the lack of diversity around some of those stories. University of Wisconsin just did the study. You're basically almost as likely to get a story about an animal or an object than you are to get a story about someone from, a diverse background. And that's shocking to me, and quite honestly, pretty sad. You use that phrase, the mirrors and the windows and the sliding doors. I don't know how, as a child, if you're inundated with one type of story, to your point on this idea and this theme of mirrors and windows, if I'm a white child who's getting nothing but positive narratives on a consistent basis, I think I'm going to have potentially maybe an inflated amount of empowerment that's there. And I think on the flip side, if I'm a child that is from a diverse background and I'm not getting those stories, but I'm getting the ones that have, predominantly white characters and these really positive narratives, I think it can affect a little bit of the self-esteem as well, and really question what's possible. I think about even my own career as a broadcaster. Jed, I had no idea growing up as a kid that this was a viable path for me. And look, here it is. I mean, NBA TV, ESPN, Pac-12 Network, and now NFL Network. Like, I'm in it. Like, this is what my life and my career is. And it really did take, I didn't think about this until I got to college. And all it took was me to see Michael Kim on ESPN. And I paused and I said, oh my God, I've never seen an Asian dude do sports before. And I think that planted a seed and put me on this path.
Well, I'm really happy that you are creating books like Fried Rice and Marinara. We do celebrate the mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. As somebody who is white and almost 100 years old,
you look great for your age, by the way.
Well, thank you. I personally celebrate the windows aspect of books, because I grew up with all the books. People didn't necessarily look like me, and they seemed to have a lot more money than we had growing up. But I understand it was like people who looked like me were in the kids' books. I love the fact that books give kids a glimpse into other cultures, and that through books we have a chance to sit down and go into the home of an Asian family or Middle Eastern family or wherever, and discover that, yes, they speak a different language, they wear different clothes, they eat different food, but they think like they feel like I do. And wow, we share a lot more of the important things than we don't share. And I think that that's such an important message for everybody to embrace.
Yeah, it's really well said, Jed, because I think there's a lack of celebration around some of the differences, which are okay, and maybe not recognizing a lot of the similarities that you just touched on between various cultures. Occasionally, if I go into the park and I'm shooting hoops, and you just sort of see the playground and you go, oh my God, look at those kids. And I think people who are listening to your podcast who have maybe young children, they'll probably see a lot of those themes, right? Like the kid who shows up to the park doesn't necessarily think to themselves like, oh my God, I don't want to play with this kid because of how they look. And to me, that's at some point in our lives, something kind of breaks off, and the thinking behind some of this stuff is separated. I did see, and not to make this like a super, statistical based interview by any stretch of the imagination, but I saw this study the other day. I think it was the American Association of Psychology or something along those lines. And the numbers were sort of staggering to me. It was, by the time a child is 3 or 4 years old, they're able to already have a thought process behind different races. And I think that to me is really significant, and it speaks to the importance of seeing diversity in those windows that you're talking about for children when they're so young, to be able to connect with other cultures and see some of those differences, but know that that's okay. Like that's a good thing that we're all able to celebrate and associate, some of the positive emotions that come with other cultures.
Yeah. It makes perfect sense that an NFL guy would be all into the stats. So don't apologize.
We could start talking about passing yards for different quarterbacks in the NFL, and the wide receiver that I think is going to be the best this upcoming season. Happy to help with fantasy if anyone wants to hit me up on social media.
I'm wondering if your parents, Italian, Chinese parents, experienced the same thing that I experienced with my beautiful wife. And I know that when we first got married, I had some of my friends come up and like, whoa, this must be such a struggle for you. The cultures are so different. And so at first I'm kind of like hearing that it's so different. And yes, I had never seen Sabado Gigante before on television, and the language is different and the food is different, but it didn't take me more than a couple months to realize that the values that my beautiful wife's family share are the same exact values that my family brought me up with. Being respectful, caring to others, standing up for others, family. So very quickly, I was telling my friends who were worried about me, dealing with all the challenge. I'm like, dude, they eat rice and we eat potatoes, but other than that, we're all the same.
You're right. The starch is in there, and it's making its way into the diet. It's funny. I've heard the stories over the years. My dad is not as vocal on some of the struggles and the stories that he's experienced over the course of his life. In fact, I've learned more about my dad's past through my mom telling me those stories than my dad. A few years ago, I wrote, there was a lot going on with immigration, and I was seeing parents and children separated, and it was really heartbreaking for me. I mean, it was really a struggle. I was watching the news coverage, and I'm thinking to myself, how in the world can you take, a kid and take them away from their parents when they've done nothing wrong other than trying to find a better life, because it was such a struggle for them, in their respective homes, which is challenging itself, right? I mean, think about that idea of having to go and leave your home, leave your country to go to a place where it's completely foreign, where you don't speak the language, just because the situation is so dire. So it was really bothersome to me. And I think in a lot of ways it mimicked the path that my dad and his family had coming to this country from Hong Kong. And I wrote sort of a story around how they got here, hoping that I could maybe change one or two people's thought process around immigration and why people go and do it. And, to get back, this is a long-winded way of answering your question, but I think about, some of their experiences, and I'll never forget this. And I don't I think it's always bothered me over the years, but I was born in the Bronx, and it's not like we were wealthy when we were growing up, but my mom and my dad, they had saved enough money to try to buy a home in New Jersey in the suburbs, and that's ended up where I grew up. And what was interesting was when I was young, my mom told me that they were interested in a house. And she went to go and see the house, and she really liked it and said, "Oh my God, like this could be, the house that we go and hopefully are able to get." And then my dad went to go and see the house after, and suddenly the house was no longer available. And I remember as a kid, my mom telling me that story and how confused and how I didn't understand like some of the emotions around it. Now I think back and I think how sad that is. And there's a certain level of anger that I have for that, because your folks are, it's my parents, right? Like they're on the receiving end of something inappropriate that in a lot of ways changed the trajectory of their lives, right? Like we ended up in the house that we ended up in. By the way, it ended up, working out great. I love the town. I made great friends, and all of those things happen, but why did it happen that way? And, I think, to the comments that your friends were making, they cared about you, Jed, like they wouldn't have said those things to you if they didn't. But at the same time, it's like, damn, like so different. Really? Is it different? Because you're right. At the crux of it, it's the attributes that we all have and we all hope that we pass to our kids. Those are the same ones from a cultural standpoint that are universal. Mm-hmm. And I think the more people that recognize what you just discussed, I think we'd all be in a better situation on this planet if people thought that way.
You're absolutely right. And we've hosted kids, international students here in our home from India, from China, from Japan, from the Netherlands, from Italy. And it's the same thing. Different languages, different customs, but the same values of love and family and being there for each other. And, I'm delighted that there are books like Fried Rice and Marinara out there so that we can start these conversations with our kids and help them realize that this is it's a flawed country, but it's a beautiful country, and there's so much potential here for us to make the dream that not only the founding fathers and Dr. Martin Luther King had, but hopefully that we all have, that this can be a place where a country where everybody truly is welcome and accepted. And it's our kids that are gonna make that happen, I hope.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, and hopefully the story will resonate for some families and open up some of these dialogues, and obviously maybe not as elevated and as serious in tone, but I do think, I really do hope that there's, some kid who will, read the book and think to themselves like, oh yeah, like I have a funky food combination. Like what's that step one, right? In this process and in this conversation, it might sound basic, but if you can have that impact, and I know it sounds really corny and cheesy, and I swear to you, Jed, I'm not necessarily that dude, but I really do hope at least it can change the minds of at least one or two kids out there, and hopefully a larger number than that.
Absolutely. Well, I think the kids are going to be easy. It's going to be the parents that we're going to have to change some minds about. But that's okay, because I really think that just like my kids helped me realize a whole lot of different things that I wasn't able to see, our kids, through the help of books like Fried Rice and Marinara, are going to help us and help their parents see a little bit clearer than we're able to see. I'm curious now that, a Fried Rice and Marinara out there. Did you get any grief from the guys in the locker room? NFL Network?
It's crazy, Jed. When I got hired a few years ago at NFL Network, it was still sort of the remote. I was in the Bay Area because my previous job had me there. And when I moved down to Southern California in our studios, it's actually really cool. They gave me a tour of the locker room, and there really is an actual locker room for all the on-air folks. And we all have our individual lockers that are there. And, they got the nameplates, and I start going through the locker room, Jed. I mean, it's all dudes, it's got Hall of Famers. It's guys that I went and watched, and they said, hey, any of the empties you can have, like whichever one you want. And I immediately saw this one row of lockers, and there was an empty. And Steve Mariucci, it was next to his locker and 2 over from one of my all-time and probably my favorite player of all time, LaDainian Tomlinson, who's 2 lockers away from me. So I said, hey, I want the one as closest to LT as possible. And it's a thrill because I get to work with Mooch and LT now on a somewhat regular basis, and they're awesome people. But so far, Jed, no one has teased me about the book. In fact, a couple, David Carr, whose locker is right across from me. David's got little ones as well, so I gave him access to the story, and his little ones really have enjoyed it too.
That's wonderful. Well, we've had the pleasure of having Malcolm Mitchell, former New England Patriot, here on the podcast. He wrote a kid's book, and he has a fascinating story. So we want to encourage everybody to check out our interview with Malcolm Mitchell and right after you finish listening to Michael Yam. I'm curious, Michael, are we going to see a sequel? Maybe Meatball Fried Rice?
So I've given it some thought, and I have, right as the computer that we are talking, right behind our screen, there's a folder that's got some drafts. And not another one right now. Well, maybe there is a half-completed manuscript on another food one, but there's 2 other stories that I feel really, really passionate about, both of which have actually nothing to do with food, but speaks to a lot of the themes that you and I have been discussing on this podcast. So hopefully, fingers crossed, Fried Rice and Marinara does well enough and someone gives me an opportunity to do another book or 2. But I would absolutely love it. This has been so much fun. I love my day job. I love talking about the NFL and doing the studio shows for NFL Network. But this has been such a rewarding experience to be able to have conversations like this with people like you who are, in this space, that are trying to amplify stories for a lot of authors out there that are trying to, have a positive impact on kids in general. So to me, I'm cautiously optimistic that I'll get another opportunity. I really hope that is the case.
Awesome. Well, in the meantime, I see the 2-minute, we have 2-minute warning. Is that what they're doing in the NFL?
You got it right. Yes.
Where can we go? The other night, I was listening to a Red Sox play-by-play broadcast. My wife was at the game, and there was a rain delay, so I wanted to make sure I was there right when she got out. And the announcer was talking about the opener, the opening pitcher, and I'm like, opener? Isn't it starter? I know I haven't been as in tune with sports as I was. But anyways, now that we're in the 2-minute warning, we need to find out where we can go to find out more about Michael Yam and also Fried Rice and Marinara.
Yeah, for sure. So the Twitter handle and the Instagram handle are both the same. It's at Mike_Yam. And then if you're interested in the book, there's 2 ways to access it. It was really important for me through the Vooks platform, which is actually a paid subscription. But Jed, and I probably should have even told you about this before we started, but Vooks does an incredible job of taking children's stories. They fully animate them with read-along text and narration. If you sign up, if you have a kid in your life who you think could benefit from it, if you just use my last name, Yam, you can get a full free year service of the subscription of the Vooks platform, or you can just go to YouTube. We all have access as long as you have the internet. You can type in Fried Rice and Marinara, and you can watch the animated story. And if you're so inclined, I would absolutely love it. But if you're inclined and you think your child or someone in your family would like the actual book, it's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and would love for some of those funky food combinations, the pictures, the drawings, the words. Take a picture on your phone. You can tag me on social media, and maybe that sparks, Jed, the other food book that I will end up doing. If I get a really good combination, one of these kids could be a co-author with me.
That sounds like a great challenge. So get out there. We got to get Michael back on the podcast with a brand new book. In the meantime, everybody check out Fried Rice and Marinara, a beautiful picture book from our guest, Michael Yam. Hey, Michael, thanks so much for being with us.
Jed, really appreciate the time and appreciate the thoughtful conversation.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Kathleen Bostrom. Kathleen will be here. We hope you'll be here too. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we're going to start by thanking our guest, Michael Yam. Please be sure to check out Fried Rice and Marinara. We also want to thank our amazing sponsors, Prue McDonald, author of The Chuckle Wobbles, a Reading with the Kids certified great read. And we also want to thank Rosalie Mass Taylor. She is the author of Hunter's Tall Tales. I want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Monica Rivera Sosa, Ann O'Leary, Soji, Franklin, Madison, Dieris. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.